Board of County Commissioners now back in session. Next on the agenda will be Mr. Kirk Blair, TDC Administrative Report.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I came before you 2 weeks ago, so you received the collections report at that time and hasn't changed any since then. So, but I normally report on that at this meeting, so that's why it's not included, but you've received it. The major item that I have on my report today are the contracts for the vendors, the 4 vendors. You'll remember that a couple meetings ago you approved the recommendations by the TDC on the selection of the 4 vendors for internet, print, radio, and TV, and at that meeting you referred the contracts back to us for negotiation, and we have done that, and our board has approved a series of recommendations for the vendors, which are included in the contracts before you. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have about it, and we're looking to have you approve those today because we're getting close to the end of the fiscal year.
As the board members all reviewed the contracts, any questions, comments? Pleasure of the board.
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Massey. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. I'll just make a last comment on my report. I've included a number of informational items at the end of the report about our various relationships with regional activities, so just bring that to your attention. I talk about those, and we've talked about all of them over the last 6 months or a year. I simply presented them today because there's activity going on by all of them. We are going to be doing a press tour with the Riverway South Group here in the next few weeks. We got funding for the second phase of the 98 Corridor project that we've talked to you about in the past, and there's more work being done now by the Northwest Florida TDC Coordinating Council, which is a coalition of the 8 tourist development councils in Northwest Florida, essentially the BP impacted TDCs, and they're working with Visit Florida on a panhandle, if you will, Northwest Florida branding and marketing effort, of which we're a part, as a way of isolating out Northwest Florida as an attraction, as a place to go. That's all consistent with our 98 Corridor work and trying to draw some of the people that are in Central Florida, basically at Disney, and the other attractions to come up to Northwest Florida, for the rest of their vacation. So you'll be hearing more and more about those as they become finalized, and I'll be, to the extent that I'm here, will be available to bring them to you and keep you appraised of those activities.
Any comments from Mr. Blair while he's here this morning from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
since Mr. Blair is here representing the TDC, is there any way that we can bring up the item on Mr. Shooter's report about the RFQ for administrative services at this time? While we have
Sure.
that up there.
Mr. Chairman, may I proceed?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Commissioners, at the last meeting, you asked me to bring back to you the RFQ for your review and for you to provide to me any guidance on how you wanted to proceed forward with the advertising of the RFQ. And I guess I'm here this morning. I've given you, I guess, a week and a half ago, a red line version of some changes that I had proposed. One change that I had proposed was to delete the requirement for professional E&O insurance. I don't think that's appropriate coverage for a TDC administrator to provide. He'll provide general liability, but not the professional errors and omissions insurance. And then the other change that I was recommending was a form that was on the checklist of forms to turn in, but it was internally inconsistent with the RFQ, because the RFQ states that compensation will be negotiated between the board and whoever this county commission selects as the number one candidate after interviewing. So I deleted out that provision, and if those two changes are acceptable to the board, and I was looking through here, I can't seem to locate it, but I know those were the two changes that I made, and if those two changes are acceptable to the board, then the RFQ, I think, is ready to be submitted for publication. But there's one final issue that we need to go over, and I would like, and it's just a procedural matter, but I want to make sure I get the substance of the RFQ completed before I move on to the procedural matter. So are those two changes that I've described acceptable to the board?
Name them again now. 'Cause I was trying to find it on here, that's the reason.
Yes, ma'am. If you'll look at my item number 4 on my report, the changes that I have added are on pages, and I list out several pages for the board. Most of those are probably going to be on page 38. Let me get page 38. I should say most. One of the changes, yes. On item number 8 of the checklist, it's section 6 of the RFQ. There's a worksheet that you turn in saying the compensation that you're requesting for the board to consider. And I know that created some consternation early on by some of the applicants during the first round of advertising, because they said, well, A, there's not a form for compensation attached, and B, the RFQ says that compensation will be negotiated between the boards, so therefore they would not be making a proposal. So in order to clarify that, and actually I noticed here I did not delete compensation, I just added a proviso that said you'll provide information on compensation if compensation has been requested by this proposal, and as we all know, it is not being requested. So I can either just strike out number 8 completely, or we can leave it as is, but I do think as written that solves the problem. Then the other change on the E&O, I believe is on pages 32 and 35. No, the change to number 35 again is on the non-collusion affidavit, and it refers to prices, and I've added the conditional that if any prices are requested by this proposal, they will have been arrived at independently from any of the other proposers. Page number 32. That is the provision for the O&E, the omissions and errors professional liability insurance. I just, when I was preparing the RFQ based on the document I got from Monroe County, what they were using this proposal for required O&E, they were providing professional services, but I don't think you're going to find anyone that's going to write an O&E policy for a TDC administrator. Let's see, the other change on page 29, same deletion of the O&E policy, and then, let's see, on page 18, that probably has to do with the procedural matter. It does. The rest of the changes are on the procedural matter, which I'm fairly confident that the board wants this process concluded while Commissioner Sanders is here prior to the first meeting in November, but we've been bidding this out like on 30-day notices. I had talked to Mr. Blair, and he's given me a schedule whereby we can have this process completed and back to you by the first meeting in November. And so I was asking your permission to make that change in the RFQ as well.
That's what I was gonna do, because it concerned me.
Sure.
As you all know, I've served as chairman of the TDC on behalf of this board for over 12 years. And because of different time restraints on the other commissioners and stuff like that, I went and filled in the gap. And I'm the type of person that I like to see it all the way to the end, commissioners, and y'all know that. And I would love to be able to sit in on this, and so I do want, and y'all won't believe this, but I do agree with the county attorney on this. But, and to let's go ahead and move ahead, and let's get this done and put the baby to bed. And because we've been enough. So what do we need to do then, Mr. Shearer, on this to move ahead?
Madam Commissioner, if y'all accept the presentation as I've given it to you, it would just be a motion to approve the RFQ as recommended by the attorney with the changes that we've discussed here this morning.
Okay, now on this, you had something in here that the date for the end of applications to be submitted was October 26th, but now that's gonna be changed now?
Right, if we follow the usual course here, but we've already advertised this twice,
Yeah,
you know, I'm comfortable with having a modified, more abbreviated publication schedule, so we can meet that requirement of having this process concluded by the first meeting in November. But I don't like changing board policy without coming back to the board, making sure y'all are okay with it, at least in this one limited circumstance.
I'm fine with it too, and in all due respect, Commissioner Sanders, bidding out the vendor contracts, bidding out the TDC administrator contracts was done where you could participate.
yeah, I know.
I pushed for it to be done this year while you're still sitting here. So
Well,
I'm good with it. Let's move on.
Well, one of the things that, you know, took us along in this whole process is because of last year and the Speaker of the House, Cochran. We all remember that. And so we wanted to make sure that we had that transparency issue taken care of. So I don't feel comfortable making the motion. I don't have no problem making the second, but I don't feel.
Well, I also had concerns after, because before when we were talking about this, you made the motion for it to come back to us before it went back in publication. I seconded it. And immediately after that meeting, I told Michael Rowan, I said, Michael, we just put ourselves on a bad timeline.
I
You
know.
know, that was a concern of mine, so I have no problem making the motion to approve.
Second.
We got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones to approve advertising this.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Second by Commissioner Massey. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, Michael, do you have an estimate of when the proposals would be due then, if not the 26th, a couple weeks before that? I'm trying to get,
Well, actually, you gave me the
Yeah, I was afraid you were
timeline,
gonna
so
say
I'm gonna
that.
need you to recreate that and give it to you.
well, I don't have it in front of me, so all right, we'll
Well,
go
we
back to
start
that.
advertising next week, it'll be 30 days from then, right?
No, if the soonest, well, the way the newspaper works now, I can't get this ad into the paper until Thursday of next week.
That's correct.
So I will not be able to advertise 30 days from next week and get it back to the TDC and back to you, I don't believe.
So
We
how
may have
long
to
will
do-
we advertise? 3 weeks?
We can do it, that's what we're going to look at, but it will probably, instead of being 30 days, it may be 21 days.
Okay.
And then they'll have to schedule a special meeting of the TDC to come in, and if you have more than 5, then they'll rank the top 5 and eliminate anybody above the top 5. But in any event, the top 5 will be sent back to this board without any ranking for interview and selection by the board. It may be during that last meeting, the first meeting in November. It may be some other special time period. That's something that is in flux right now, but we'll certainly come up with a schedule that works best for everybody's schedules and make sure that the board is aware of and approves the schedule.
I have a question, sir. Are they gonna do the, pick them out, and we're gonna do the interviewing, right?
They will rank and score the top 5.
Okay, the
And
top
they'll-
5, they're gonna rank and score.
And they'll send the top 5 back to you without any ranking whatsoever. Everybody will be on the level. It won't be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They'll just send the top 5 without any preference or ranking to you. The reason they're doing any ranking at all is, what if they get 8 applicants? You said you want to interview the top 5.
That's right.
I'm
But
just
the board-
wondering, cause I've had a couple might, talking about putting in for the job. I was just wondering,
Mike, you had a comment?
Yeah, I have an item, so you guys get through for,
And then just make sure that I'm clearly understanding the board's directions from the last meeting. You said the top 5, but if you only get 4, then the top 4 comes. If you only get 3, it's the top 3.
That's good.
That's right.
Can I do a housekeeping measure for the TDC here, Mr. Chairman? It's part. Last Wednesday, we were supposed to have had our meeting, and we didn't meet a quorum of the 4. And I just wanted, because I hadn't communicated with Kurt, I just wanted to ask the questions. I know the top thing that we were supposed to take care of was the promotions. And that, do we have enough time since October 1 is gonna be after we meet again on October 2nd? Do we need to have, this is just TDC, do we need to have a TDC meeting in between now and then to accept? or
Commissioner, we
discuss
could,
the-
what is pending and is on hold, if you will, the,
Okay.
putting into operation the marketing budget. Now, the board has already approved a series of our fall advertising schedule that we usually pay in this fiscal year in advance of the upcoming fiscal year, which we've done already. So I don't think there's anything else that's pending that is going to be, there's going to be problems with as long as we get it done on the 10th of October.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I just wanted to make sure that we wrap it all up.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
We going out for TDC administrator, right?
The administrator and also the operations of the East Point Visitor Center. Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's gonna be a combo of all of them. They gonna,
Those two.
whoever get the job gonna be over everything what Kurt over now, right?
Yes, sir. That's the way the board has things structured at this point. The new administrator would also run the East Point Visitor Center.
That's what I want to know, I just want to make.
Mike?
Which transitions it into item 2. On my report, Commissioners, at your last meeting, the board agreed to extend the TDC administration contract to a month-to-month status with a 3-month cap. This was done as a result of the board decision to re-advertise the Professional Executive Administration Services, TDC contract. Mr. Kurt Blair, current administrator, has sent his terms for this month-to-month contract, which includes changing the status from month-to-month to a 3-month extension. So it'd be for 3 months, not a month-to-month. Increased compensation for the administration contract, but no increases for the visitor center and promotional services contracts. So to answer your question, it's almost 3 contracts what you're actually hiring. It's the administration, it is a visitor center, and a promotional services contract, Commissioner Lockley. There are some of the language changes in the agreements. Attaches a memo from Mr. Blair explaining these changes and a draft copy of his proposed contract for your review. Board action to approve the administrative, visitor center, and promotional services contracts from October 1, 2018 to December 31st, 2018.
Pleasure of the board.
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Sanders. Do we have a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Massey. Any further discussion?
I have a
Yeah,
question. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
This is, Michael, is this in our, should be on our iPad
Yeah, so I sure
with the
hope so.
figures and all?
It should have been there, it'll say draft over the,
Okay.
that was his memo, and then there's a draft.
At the end of
If you go to
it.
my report, Commissioner, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Not on the, he's under my report.
Okay.
Where am I? I'm all the way down there. There you go, that's his memo to me, and that
Okay.
is the draft agreement.
I just missed that last night, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's right.
Oh, only don't take 3 months.
The way this is worded, it's gonna be 3 months.
Yeah.
And it's actually probably gonna help us because whoever does become the next administrator, there is gonna be some overlap,
And then underneath that.
some industry knowledge Mr. Kerr has from
Yeah.
doing it that need to be passed on.
You just have to understand that when you adopt this 3-month until December 31st, that it's gonna be less money to be negotiated with the next administrator because you're
Correct, sir.
taking out 1/4 of that money.
Mhm.
That's what I'm talking about. That's, I give him a question is, if it's over the 3 months, we gonna have to pay both of them?
It ain't gonna be over the 3 months.
I mean, during the 3 months.
During the 3 months, you'll be paying both of them.
Yeah,
And I don't know how you gonna, that's the issue.
It's a good question, Commissioner. Because there needs to be some transition between Mr. Blair and the new TDC. I mean, for it to be smooth, I mean, I don't sit on the board, but for it to be a smooth transition, you know.
Whoever selected is gonna have to then go in and learn how
Yeah.
everything works.
With their official date being January 1, 2019. I
Pretty
guess.
much.
Yeah.
So then it wouldn't affect it, because if they start in January, they're only gonna get paid for the 9
Well, I
months.
don't know if they're gonna wanna go in and work and learn the ropes and not be compensated for that.
Yeah,
So they would officially take over January 1, but in the meantime, they're not gonna go in there and sit through November,
right, that'd be
December and not
difficult.
be compensated.
that'd be difficult.
So it's gonna reduce the amount of money that's available to negotiate with the next TDC administrator through the rest of the budget year.
Yes, good point.
May have to pay them
But
out.
the way Mr. Blair has it, in there is
Yeah.
1/12, each month is 1/12 of the TDC administrator's budget, so. If whoever's the next administrator doesn't try to come in and raise the cost of everything that they're doing, then there should be sufficient funds there. Correct?
Yes, Commissioner, and it's also based on on the increase over last year. So I think you'll have enough money for the new administrator even within that. I mean, the second year's an increase over the first year, and we found that we could do, with last year's. I mean, obviously, if they come in and they want $80,000, then, for their salary, then you can't do that. But I think you've got enough money in there that allows you some negotiating room.
We do have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other comment? Ms. Lucky, you have any further comment? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
I will say, Commissioners, the month of October allows us, it's one of those months with the extra Tuesday, as I call it, so there will be an extra day, a week that we could have a special meeting of this board if needed be. So I just want to put that in the back of your minds.
Any other comments from Mr. Blair while he's here? Thank you, Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Next on the agenda would be Mr. Sandy Martin, Business Manager, Florida Department of Health.
Good morning, Commissioners. I did bring Sandy Martin. She's our business manager for the Florida Department of Health in Franklin and Gulf. I'm Sarah Hines. I'm the administrator for the Florida Department of Health in Franklin and Gulf. And of course, you all know Ms. Helen Cook. She's our director of nursing and our amazing ARNP. We're here today to ask for two things: the approval of the core contract and the approval of the fee schedule. And the purpose of these agreements are to maintain compliance with Florida Statute 15401. The contract, which is standard across counties, is necessary to ensure coordination between the state and the county in the operation of the county health department. The contract also specifically mentions 3 levels of service considered core public health, which must be maintained. And those services are environmental health, communicable disease control services, and clinical care for special populations. The core contract has not changed. The template remains the same. The fee schedule has a minor change, up $3 for birth and death certificates, and that's just to align ourselves across our counties. I brought Helen here today, and as you know, your contribution, which you approved for $49,000, goes directly into our clinic budget to provide core public health services. It pays for part of a nurse, an RN. And I wanted Helen to have a chance to discuss the agreements today and share any additional information. So Helen?
Hello, how are you guys? I just wanted to mention about when you say those services, our core, and she did say our core public health services, we're talking about tuberculosis treatment, STD services, pregnancy testing, HIV, counseling and testing, communicable disease services. And I think you have a lot of attachments in there that kind of show you some numbers that we did last year. And so I just wanted to bring that. And the only changes, it's the same exact fee schedule we've had for a couple years. Our fee schedule aligns with a standard, industry standard of Medicare rates, and that hasn't changed for us for several years now. The only thing we did have to change this year, we did increase our birth certificates and death certificates, and $3. And we did add a plastic sleeve. If somebody would like to purchase a sleeve to protect them, they can purchase that as well. And that's the only changes we made on our clinic side of the budget this year. And I think environmental health stayed exactly the same, unchanged.
I would ask one thing, Commissioners, our final public hearing for the budget is this evening at 5:15. So, with your motion, if you decide to motion to approve, then you make a contingent that we get our budget, which we probably will, get our budget worked out this evening at the final budget hearing.
Okay, that's good. I make a motion. Contingent on the outcome of the budget this afternoon.
And that's for the fee schedule and the core contract?
Yes.
Yeah.
Second.
We do have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Lockley, second by Commissioner Sanders. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention one more thing.
Okay.
October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I always like to tell you guys about one program that we do when I come, and you know that. We have a program called the Florida Breast and Cervical Cancer Detection Program, and it's available to women age 50 to 64 that have no insurance or underinsured, and they can come into the health department, receive a clinical breast exam, a mammogram, and a pap smear if it's indicated, free of charge. And I just want to mention that, and I want to share a little bookmarker about the program with you guys and some little breast cancer awareness stuff you can take home and that sort of thing. So, thank you so much. I always appreciate your support.
Thank you. Next on the agenda will be Miss Amy Ham Kelly, Planning and Zoning Report.
Michael, the other cord is in the bag if I need to. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. This morning, we have 2 docks for the critical shoreline application. We had a recommendation for approval unanimous. It was a consideration of a request to construct a single-family dock located at 504 River Road, Carabel, Franklin County, Florida. The proposed dock will be 976 square feet, consisting of a 34 by 6 terminus, a 27 by 34 proposed roof, a 10-foot by 6-foot step down, and a 3-foot by 34-foot finger pier. Applicant has their DEP permits and is exempt from the Army Corps of Engineers permitting. Request submitted by Dan Garlick, Garlick Environmental Services, agent for Nancy and Sammy Deal, owner, and the property does have a house on it.
So moved.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Master, second by Commissioner Lockley. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, the second item on the agenda is a recommendation for approval. It's unanimous. Consideration of a request to construct a 37-foot by 18-foot roof over an existing boat lift and a single-family private dock located at 335 Bruce Street, St. George Island, Franklin County, Florida. Applicant has their DEP permits and is exempt from the Army Corps of Engineers permitting. Request submitted by Dan Garlick, Garlick Environmental Services, agent for Clint Cadell, applicant. There's no house, but there's an existing dock that they're doing a roof over the boat lift.
Real quick, Amy, is this is in the man-made canal, correct?
It is in a man-made canal. This is the property here.
Mhm.
And as you can see, there's really no property across the canal from this property.
He's already got one.
They're not extending the dock out.
So it's adding the roof over.
They're just adding a roof over, so it may be about 18 inches extra additional into the canal.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because I'm just trying to make sure it's not out in the bay per se, it's actually
No.
still in the canal.
It is.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Sanders. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? That motion carries.
We have another item, it's a sketch plat approval. It was recommended approval, it was unanimous. There's a consideration of a request for a sketch plat approval for Resort Village 3, requesting to convert lots 14 through 20 and 36 through 58 Resort Village, converting those existing lots into common areas. Request submitted by Barbara Sanders, agent for the St. George Island Plantation Homeowners Association. And as you can see, here's the area. All of this in blue is basically the lots that they're wanting to convert from lots into common area.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Lockley. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? That motion carries.
Okay. This morning, on the Planning and Zoning Commission, the staff, we talked, and, we're, as you know, we're requesting, in the paper for additional planning and zoning and Board of Adjustment members. Right now, we have an alternate, Jerry Jackson, and there's a recommendation to move him to, at-large position 3. He's been a regular attendee, for several months. Bless you. Bless you.
Pleasure of the board.
He-
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Sanders, second by Commissioner Lockley. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? That motion carries.
Okay, and then just a notation of a violation that we are in the process of taking care of in, Lanark. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Amy.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, there was no Board of Adjustment, not because there was an issue, just no request.
Okay.
We didn't have any applications.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Ms. Amy
Mhm.
something? Or just comment? Amy, on this, situation with RV violation in District 2, can you keep me posted on that?
I sure will, yes, ma'am. A certified mail has been sent.
Appreciate
And
it.
as soon as I have notice, I'll let you know.
Okay, appreciate
Thank
it.
you
When
very
when you
much.
get a response from him, let me know.
Thank you.
Have a good
Next on the agenda is Ms. Petty.
Good morning. My name is Paul Yan. I am Mrs. Petty's son-in-law. She would like me to speak for her today. She has a really hard time hearing you guys. But just wanted to remind, we're here for a power pole. There has been an existing power pole there before. This address is 496 D Avenue A. It is recognized by the 911. It does have a water tap that Mrs. Petty's been paying for a long time, years. It does have a county sewer hookup, and as I said, it used to have a pole before someone helped themselves to it. In fact, the wires that went to the power pole is still curled up on the utility pole located not 20 foot away from the place where we want to locate this pole. And that's what we're here for today, is to get a permit to allow Mrs. Petty to put RV or something on that piece of land so she can use her land.
Let me state real quick, Mike, I got a conflict with this. I'll have to conflict out on this. So I'll be filing for him for that.
All right, Commissioners. So, you asked to put this on the agenda so the staff and I can do some research on this. Okay, so this location, 496D Avenue A, is in East Point. It's part of a bigger plot that's actually less than an acre. I think it's 97 tenths of an acre, it's just right under an acre. And it's been zoned R4 based on the research I've done since the oldest county zoning map that we can find. Mark and I did some research. There are 4 houses that, the property appraiser has 3 houses, but there's one house that has a second street address that's part of this entire lot. So there are 4 houses and there are 2, call them either camper trailers or RVs that are there. In talking to Mr. Curriton, your planner, he said he had a conversation, I don't know if it was with you, sir, a while back. He said Miss Petty's son, so I don't know if you met her son-in-law.
It was her and I.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
yes, and he said he'd asked them if they have any proof that this was subdivided and deeded in the past to show that each house was on its own lot. There was none, they could not provide any of that. So, long and short, Commissioners, this makes this lot non-conforming because it's an acre, only one structure is allowed on this lot. And so, in discussions, I'll be short, in discussions with the building official, your zoning administrator, your current and your prior planners, our hands are tied. The staff has no leeway, no way possible for us to even consider this. So we would have to recommend as staff to this board a denial of the request for the power pole. And again, it's based on how many structures are already on this lot. I grant you that it was probably grandfathered in because at the time when the zoning came about, which is before my time, you know, they were already there. But if there's ever some, God forbid, something happens or one of those units are destroyed, the county is not in a position, legally, we cannot issue them a permit to rebuild it. So the staff role right now is if something is destroyed or removed, it stays removed until we get it down to one structure for this 1 acre, or right under acre. That is the staff's recommendation.
If a pole was there, we did not have it removed. It was removed by someone else that frankly stole it.
Yeah.
I mean, would that make any sense
No,
at
sir,
all
because-
to you, that, you know, it wasn't our fault that
Go-
we
go-
did not remove the pole?
God forbid a storm came through, sir, and destroyed one of the houses, even one of the houses on that property, we would not be able to issue you a permit to rebuild that house.
Well, I know that Mrs. Petty has spent several $1,000s to these homes, to the interior of these homes in the past couple of years, and have completely remodeled them, thus increasing the value of each and every home. So she has been invested in this property a lot.
Do these homes have power?
Yes, yes.
So that's not what you don't have a home there that don't have power. They have power.
Yeah,
You won't
all
put an
the homes
additional
have
pole on there.
their own pole.
And that's what he's getting to. We're not telling you gotta tear the houses down.
Yeah, stop
But
it.
if they was to burn down or blow down, we cannot give you a permit to put that house back, much less a
Right.
power pole. That's what he's trying to say.
Right.
So, it is a pleasure of the board.
Yeah, what you got is an unrecorded subdivision that unfortunately years and years and years ago, I mean, before 1978, somebody should have recorded deeds, separate deeds for each parcel. I agree that an acre of sewer and water, you theoretically could have had 4 units, 1/4 acre lots, but they should have been recorded as separate parcels. You've got yourself a problem, I'll be honest with you, for a number of reasons, because now you have one parcel with 4 units on there, 4 or 5 units, and they're all in one piece of land. I mean,
And they're not
Yeah.
zoned for.
It's
Right.
not zoned for
for
that.
acre.
that should have been dealt
That's
with.
only bad thing.
And the bigger question, is like all the people that got burned out on Wilderness and Ridge out in that area. Some of them had 4 camper trailers or 5 camper trailers. Well, those people aren't gonna be able to put those back.
Yeah, we can't put those back either.
So you understand that the,
Is that not being done? Are they putting power poles? I'm sorry. Aren't they putting power poles where, the burnouts in East Point?
Yeah.
they're putting one power pole for one mobile home, not all those campers and sheds and all that other stuff that used to be out there.
Right.
So the problem is if we turn around and give you a power pole at this piece of property, then all those folks that got burned out are gonna they're gonna demand that they get treated equally, and they get a power pole for however many campers they had, and however many sheds. So it's precedent setting. If we granted you a power pole, that all those people out there where there used to be 5 or 6 camper trailers on a lot are now all gonna want power poles. So the board has to be very careful of treating people fairly and equitably, and it's gonna set a precedent if we allow you to have a power pole, that all these other people are gonna say, well, we wanna be treated just like Miss Petty, we want a power pole there. We used to have one, but it's not allowed by the code. So you see the position that the board is being put in, on that. Having said that, it is a pleasure of the board. I don't speak for the board, I speak as a board member. And as I said, I've conflicted out because my sister lives on your property. So I have to conflict, so I won't be voting on this issue. But the board does have the ability to, it is up to the board. I just see it creating a lot of problems for the board. And I just wanted to state that, put that on the record. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and it's not just the people that were victims of the fire in East Point back in June, but throughout the county, for many, many years, the people have been denied power poles, all the way from the north end of the county to the south, east, and west, because that is what the code requires, and it's your lawful obligation to enforce the code as it's written. I think your staff has made the correct recommendation to you, and I think as your attorney, I would advise you to follow staff's recommendation.
It is a pleasure of the board.
Can I say something?
Yes.
You know, I've been on that board going on 14 years. 14 years I sit up here, and something like this came before us, and that was one of the hardest. I hated to make the decision. I had to, because this fella had been overseas fighting for the country and everything, and he came in just like y'all did, asked for a power pole, and we had to deny him, and I hated that, but I had to go by the rules. And just like I'm doing today, I want to do it, but we just got to go by the rules.
It is a pleasure of the board.
I would say, Ms. Petty, I went and spoke with you personally about this power pole issue, and I did my best to communicate to you if there was any possible thing we could do to rectify the situation, that we would. But based on the research that I had not done and what the county's recommended us, there's really not anything we should do about it. I understand that you guys didn't remove the pole, somebody removed it for you, but we can't be held liable for that. It's not, doesn't really fall under our obligation, the fact that somebody basically stole from you. I mean, that doesn't make it right, but there's no way we can go against, and like the chairman has said, there were a lot of people living in extra RVs on those lots that were burned out. And we've towed the line and said there's only be one pole go back on that property. So I mean, it'd be really backwards of us to give that message then and have a different message now.
Well,
And I really do hate it.
With that being said, the fact that she's been paying for a water meter there for years and years, is there a way that she can get compensated for that water meter being there that she?
That would be a question for East Point Water and Sewer, sir.
Okay.
Well, what am I supposed to do with this water and sewer, the hookups and everything I got there, just leave it like it is, or just?
That would be a question for East Point Water and Sewer, Ms. Petty. East Point Water and Sewer would have to tackle that issue for you.
Okay.
I'm not offering a suggestion or a solution because I don't know that it's possible, but if you have sewer and water and you're not in the coastal flood zone, it's possible that you could go talk to staff next door and see if you can get your property rezoned to R1A, which would give you maybe 2 lots, maybe 3 lots there, because R1A is the subdivision standard, and those lots have to be 15,000 square feet. I forget the exact size, but it's possible you could improve your situation. Right now, you're at terrible risk. Let's say if a fire came through, you just have 1 lot. You need to legally create more than 1 lot and protect yourself for those houses you already made investments in. So if I were you, I would look at some opportunity there to see if you can get it'd be a small subdivision, but it's possible you could get an R1A subdivision, because you already have sewer, water, you sound like you're on a paved road, and cut up the parcel into at least 2 to protect those houses you have there. I would look to protect yourself in case something happens.
We do need action from the board on this request. Up or down.
Motion to
Pleasure of the board.
deny.
Motion to deny by Commissioner Jones. Do we have a second?
Second, with a recommend.
Second by Commissioner Massey. They're recommending denial. They're recommending, Commissioner Jones made a motion and Commissioner Massey made a second to deny.
Yes.
Yeah. All those in favor? All opposed? Let the record reflect 4 in favor and 1 chairman abstaining.
Well, what you tell them, I mean, they heard them, but we would recommend y'all go next door and talk to them, and they probably could
What Mr. Pierce recommended? Go next door and talk.
go right next door.
And what is that called?
It's just talk to Amy Hands, and it's an R subdivision, see if you can get your property recorded as a legitimate subdivision.
Okay. Let's go next door, Mom. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is Ms. Marcia Johnson.
I just have an informational item on mine, so I don't have any action items this morning.
Madam Clerk has no action item. Next would be Mr. Alan Pierce, Restore Coordinator.
Okay, I have just one item, I guess now, two items. All right, first item we sort of briefly talked on, but let me go to the full talk into it. Inform the board that I attended the September 12th Triumph Board meeting in Panama City for two reasons. The county received a denial letter for the Armory project, which I have attached, and the agenda included discussion about the oyster recovery initiative Triumph board member Jason Schoaf has started. Regarding the Armory, I spoke to the Triumph staff extensively before the meeting. The project could be reconsidered if the county would reduce the amount of Triumph funding it is requesting, so that the leveraging of Triumph funds to community economic impact would be better. The initial request the county's made for Triumph funds was $2 million. And during the break here, I was talking to Mark, and this is a discussion I'm gonna have with you all for the first time, so you don't have to act on it today. You may decide not to change and just go the other way. Or we have put in a historic preservation grant. Let me start. The thing that's driving all this thing is that we have an order by the fire marshal that we've got to put a fire system in that armory, even though we inherited this building from the state of Florida without a fire system. Now all of a sudden it's our obligation to put a fire system in there. The fire marshal has said, and they have to review all the plans since it's a public building, that they aren't going to approve any other additions or any other improvements to that building until a sprinkler system goes in there. So we're sort of stuck. We've got to find a way to get a sprinkler system in there. Maybe the TDC has additional money. At the overall cost of the sprinkler system was like $300,000. We have $100,000 of legislative allocation already from last year that hasn't been used and is dedicated to a fire sprinkler system. So it's possible we need another $200,000, maybe TDC can come up with it. Or an alternative is that we go back to the legislature and see if they'll give us some more money. Because this is a problem the state of Florida gave us, and maybe they'll help continue to fund it to find a solution. And so if we can get that sprinkler system of some $300,000 off the Triumph list, then, then the cost goes down for what Triumph's funding, and maybe then they would reconsider that. I just thought as an option. You don't have to answer today, but we've got a denial letter, and the county, there's $15 million of Triumph money that has to be dedicated to being spent in Franklin County, so we have some, I'd say, some control over where we're going to get that.
I don't believe we're gonna have much control. If we haven't already got a project, I'm sorry, y'all, but that's just the way I feel. If we haven't got something approved now, you got Escambia being approved, you got Gulf County being approved, Wakulla County's been approved. Everybody's sitting out here with a little bit of money in the hand at Franklin County, and they told us to do a project that was, beneficial to that. Did you all let them know this is what we consider the convention center of Franklin County?
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah.
And it still didn't, it's one of the economic drivers of our county. So, I don't know.
They did receive an application from the Franklin County School Board for, I think it's $7 million for a project, so the school board is putting something in for, with an access.
And they did approve the ice thing down there at Scipio Creek, didn't they?
They did approve it. There are some conditions on that the city has to meet, so I'm not gonna reflect on whether the city can or cannot meet the obligations and requirements that Triumph has put on them. That's something for them to discuss. But yeah, the Triumph board did say to the city of Apalachicola that you can have $1.1 million for a project, but there are conditions on it, just like there are conditions on every project. Our problem was we did what our problem is we did what we were told to do, which is get a better economic development analysis done by ARPC. Even that though didn't sway them. So if we reduce the amount of money we ask, that's an option. If we can find somebody on the Triumph board who really likes our project, maybe that would help. But we couldn't seem to find anybody who really liked it. They just were like, well, can't you do something better? That's when they said, we'll go to the airport and find somebody at the airport. But there's $15 million to be spent in Franklin County. And so, we have some latitude because the legislation, until that's changed, they have to spend it here. I will say the city of Apalachicola had 2 projects that were also denied, and then one project which was never completed. I'm not sure of the city of Carabelle's situation, where they ever finished, the mayor's second, I don't think they ever finished their applications. They're very difficult, And the Triumph staff works hard to be nice, but it's an uphill battle trying to get them to understand what we're trying to accomplish.
But let me ask you something, man.
Yes, sir.
You say you're going to the airport, but them things you mentioned today, do the Triumph Board, they wanna see work.
They want jobs.
But that stuff you mentioned today, that's temporary work. I mean, you saying a FBO building. It's
Well, no, not for construction jobs, I'm sorry, Commissioner. No, I mean, if they, and I say this, if they were to expand the FBO operation, let's say they, and I don't know what else you would do, well, you'd have a maintenance, let's say you had maintenance out there. So you're repairing airplanes, because you had a better hangar to do that in. So those would be, maybe not full-time jobs, but they would be permanent jobs based upon the number of airplane maintenance they do. You know, I wasn't talking about construction jobs, so this is about jobs associated with the operation of the business.
Okay, cause I was gonna say.
Yeah, you're right, exactly, that'd be temporary stuff, yeah. Well, think on it, we don't have to answer, we don't have to reach a conclusion today, but, we've been turned down, so we just need to see what options we have. And Mark reminded me that the legislature's already approved $100,000, so maybe we go back and say, look, this is the problem you've created, maybe we should make, when your legislative delegation meeting is, which I don't know when it is, it may have already happened, pretty soon, maybe we make that a request.
Well, they gonna let us still have functions over there?
We got that, we have that, yes, but we have, well, temporarily, Commissioner, we have that cap, that we can't have any more than 172 people in there, and we can't have anybody upstairs, or there's some limitations on the use of the building. But they've been in place all along, we've managed to deal with that. All right, well, think on that, let me go to the next one then. Regarding the Triumph Oyster Recovery Initiative, as the board may recall, Mr. Jason Schoaf, Triumph board member, has asked the Triumph board to support a broad-based oyster recovery project. The impetus for this effort came from the FSU project that was to be based in Franklin County. Mr. Schoaf is envisioning a larger project than what FSU proposed, with a larger benefit area. Mr. Schoaf is talking about a $60 million oyster recovery project that will include all the oyster production areas from Pensacola to Apalachicola. In order for the Triumph Board to support the project, some portion of the funds have to generate jobs. Mr. Schoaf and Triumph staff have met with FSU and the University of Florida, as those two state institutions have shown interest in assisting with research for the recovery effort. But the partner to create jobs and actually run the recovery program has not been identified. Mr. Schoaf announced at the Triumph meeting that he has organized a meeting for September 25th at 1 p.m. at the Gulf Coast College in Panama City to hear from a variety of experts on what needs to be done to rebuild the Florida oyster industry. The Triumph staff is organizing the speakers, and the meeting is open to the public. So, we're not running the meeting. They haven't asked for our input. This is something that they're doing. We'll be the beneficiary of it if it comes to fruition. But I just want to tell you that is where it's at. And now, Mr. Schoaf, the Triumph Board established this subcommittee almost 4 months ago. This is the first time they've met. So this has been a long process to get somewhere.
It's gonna be interesting, Alan, real quick, it's gonna be interesting to see who these experts are that are gonna come in and tell us what we need to do in the Florida oyster industry,
We've been listening
when you
well.
don't even invite people out of the largest oyster producing, area in all these areas, and no one from here has been asked to come and speak on the issue and what we think needs to happen in Apalachicola Bay. Just wanted to put that out there.
I hear you loud and clear.
I may try to attend that meeting myself to maybe find some way to have some input as to what we've been through with the state and some of the recovery efforts that we've tried and have failed because they're not done the right thing at the right time in the right place. Just wanted to put that out there.
And I did talk to staff, and they're aware that there's gonna be a new Secretary of Ag, Department of Ag and Consumer Services come November, and that's putting a stall on a lot of things because no one knows the direction of what the new commissioner's gonna
Don't
do.
know who it's gonna be. I mean, that floored me too, so.
We know the old commissioner was very strong on aquaculture.
Right.
We don't know what the new commissioner's gonna do. So I suspect, I'll be honest with you, I suspect the September meeting is gonna be talking about generalities, but waiting to get some direction from the state.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We did item number 2. Item number 3, inform the board that I have been in discussion with state and federal representatives in an effort to resolve the problem of the final surface of the road the county is building in Ball Point State Park. This is the relocation of Gulf Shore Boulevard. The current park manager does not want the county to put an asphalt surface on the road that is being built with FEMA funds. I've spoken to her directly, and she does not want to see more asphalt in the park. in the event that this new road gets damaged and she has more asphalt debris to deal with. I've explained that the new road has been located so the chance of hurricane damage is small, and the county wants an asphalt service to minimize maintenance. Initially, I had said it would be a gravel service road, but when their engineers designed the road, it became apparent that they could handle stormwater runoff from an asphalt road, so they have designed an asphalt road and we bid out an asphalt road. The road is under review by park personnel and FDP, so I've requested assistance from the governor's office and from Mr. Will Kendrick, who is Congressman Dunn's aide, to have them talk to senior FDP officials to see if an asphalt road can be approved. I wrote this on Thursday. On Friday afternoon, I did get a call from the chief of staff of DEP saying that the governor's office and other people had called, and so that we are gonna get a paved road. And I haven't gotten it in writing yet, but I got the phone call Friday afternoon from the chief of staff saying, don't worry, we'll make sure it happens. So as soon as that document comes in, then I'll get with Mr. Kennedy and we'll move forward. There are some, there's some conditions on there. There were always some conditions on the thing. We gotta meet the DEP permits and that kind of stuff. So I may have to come back to you all the first meeting in October, but we're moving forward with that project. And I don't have any, the only other project that people would be interested in doing at FEMA is Alligator Point. We're still doing the permit process. It's long and slow, and it's just, never ending about what the state is asking on some of their questions. That's in my report.
The board have anything for Mr. Allen this morning?
I've got one item. Before you went out on your escapade, the latest escapades you had, I asked for you and Michael Marone to get a hold of Abraham Prado. He is no longer there with the company. And do you have a contact number for the new gentleman?
Well, no, because I'll be honest, so I got a very terse response back from the company saying Mr. Prado no longer works for Joe
I
Company.
think it's Vogel. His name is Vogel, or maybe Dean Saunders is some of the ones.
Yeah, so basically they said, please contact the new owners of the property because the St. Joe Company no longer owns the property.
Okay.
And so it's Dean Saunders is representing is the realtor selling it, but I haven't got a hold of it.
Yeah, I know on the property appraiser's website, it's listed as Oclotney Timberlands, but, I'm still gonna direct you to try to contact somebody and get with the aquaculture people down at, Leonard's Landing and Alligator Harbor to try to see if we can't give them a little piece of land to maybe put a bathroom in there and put some kind of processing thing to where they can maybe grow the oysters there in the harbor and where we don't have as much, death of the seeds, and maybe it'll be more viable for them to do that.
We'll do what we can.
So just report back to us if you don't mind.
Thank you. Okay.
You got your email from Clay? Those email.
Yeah, so we got an email from the permitting side of DEP. What I need to get is make sure that the state park side has gotten that same email, if you know what I mean.
Forward it to them.
Next will be Mr. Michael Marone, County Coordinator Report.
All right, Commissioners, item number one, at your August 21st meeting, Commissioner Sanders stated that the residents of Sun and Sand subdivision were uncomfortable with the cameras that were located around the traffic counters, which were recently installed on Alligator Drive by the Alligator Point St. Teresa Taxpayers Association. The traffic counters are part of the association's study to develop a revenue stream for funding of the supplemental beach renourishment along Alligator Drive in an effort to provide long-term protection for that road. The traffic counters will be removed by the end of this week so that the collected data could be analyzed. If there is a need to reinstall the traffic counters at some point in the future for additional data, the association will make that request to the board. Actually, I got notification this morning that the counters have been removed and they're going to remove the camera boxes by tomorrow the latest. So I'll all be taken care of by tomorrow the latest. We did item number 2. Item number 3. The county's audit review committee met on Tuesday, August 11th, to review and discuss the ranking of the proposals for Weems Memorial Hospital and for the county's auditing services. The firms were scored on their ability, experience, personnel, and references, but were not interviewed by the committee. Audit review committee recommendations. For Weems Memorial, the committee ranked the top 3 firms, which was number 1, Carr, Riggs & Ingram, LLC. Number 2 was James Moore and Company. And number 3 was Draffin and Tucker, LLP. And recommend that Weems staff negotiate with the number 1 ranked firm. If negotiations are unsuccessful, staff should negotiate with the number 2 ranked firm and then the number 3 if it becomes necessary. Board action to accept the committee's recommendation and allow Weems staff to start negotiations with Carl Riggs and Ingram.
Wait a minute. Look here. We, I got people in my district that work for the people, this,
This is Weems we're talking about, Commissioner, not the county's audit yet.
oh, okay,
Yes.
okay. Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just to supplement what Mr. Morone has told the board this morning, the way that the RFQ was advertised for the hospital is slightly different from the way the RFQ was advertised for the county auditing firms. And that difference is that after consulting with Mr. Cannington, he requested that a item concerning compensation be added to the hospital auditing RFQ. Now, what that means in terms of the statute is you do rank the top three, you send the top three to the hospital, but the difference under the statute, since compensation was part of the evaluation of the hospital auditing firms, you would have to accept that number one ranked firm unless you can come back on the public record and justify why that firm is not qualified and should not be accepted. It's slightly different than just having a negotiation. So I would request that when if you approve this recommendation, that you allow me to consult and work with the Weems people who are reviewing this auditing RFQ so that I can make sure that they comply with the statute. Because if there's a reason to reject, I want to be there to help them develop that record. And if there's not, then I want to be able to tell them there's really no basis to reject. But it is slightly different than the process you're going to go through for the county auditing firms, which is in fact a true negotiation because compensation was not a factor in the evaluation of the county auditing firms.
So should I change what I'm asking for? It should not be a negotiation, should be,
I think what you said was fine,
Oh, okay.
supplemented by what I just advised the board.
just want to make sure.
And that's for the wings.
This is for Weems.
Pleasure of the board.
Good for the wing. Now,
This is just for Weems right now. I'll get to the county in a second, sir. We're talking about Weems right now, Weems Memorial.
The further we go along in this thing, the more confusing it is. I mean, I served on the audit committee and I don't remember answering a question about compensation for the hospital stuff. I don't remember that being on there. And I read through a stack of everybody's books and scored it all in the same weekend. That was not something I'm putting off and, no, anyway.
Your recommended action here, Mike, is to accept the committee's recommendation, allow Weems staff to start negotiations with Carl Riggs and Ingram.
Yes, and Attorney Schuler will be part of that negotiation, so I'll add that to my request. Is that
Well, I would
correct?
be there just as an
Oh,
an
okay.
attorney. I would not be there as one of the negotiators.
Okay.
So board, pleasure of the board on
This is just Weems.
staff's recommendation on Weems.
so moved.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Lockley. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Massey. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
All right, Commissioners, as it relates to the county audit, the committee ranked the top three firms: number one, Purvis Gray and Company; number two, Roberson and Associates, PA; and number three, Carl Riggs and Ingram, LLC. The committee recommends that the county staff negotiate with the number one ranked firm, and if unsuccessful, negotiate with number two and number three ranked firm if it becomes necessary. Board action to accept the committee's recommendation and direct county staff to begin negotiations with Purvis Gray and Company.
Wait a minute. Now, this company here, what we got, it's been in my district. They in my district. I be up here asking for jobs and everything for a while. And I think that these people doing a good job. I think we should have just let them stay. And then the other part, if they wanna do if somebody else want to do the hospital side, mine, but I mean, I don't wanna see no shields coming out my, or nobody lose no jobs out of my district. we don't have enough in there now, and we short on jobs.
So you're saying, Commissioner, that you don't want to go with the recommendation of the audit committee?
Right. I wanna
So maybe
keep-
next time you need to be on the audit committee.
Well,
I think we ought to follow
I
through with
should
the
have been on
process.
it anyway.
Yep, you should
I
have.
think we ought to follow through with the process. I agree with Mr. Jones. I think we need to follow through the process.
Well, this whole process has been kind of cattywampus anyway. We were gonna have a meeting, then weren't gonna have a meeting. Then the meeting had to be a public meeting. Then we weren't supposed to be able to discuss at the meeting. Then the last minute, we could discuss at the meeting. That's why we didn't discuss at the meeting, because nobody was prepared for it. It's all been really cattywampus. And I definitely don't think we put our best foot forward for all these people that put in these RFQs on either.
Yeah. I agree with you, Commissioner Jones. I'm gonna make a motion that we go ahead and accept the recommendation of the committee and direct staff to negotiate.
Yes, ma'am. I think we need to go back and maybe look at the record.
Okay.
I need to verify that that's exactly what the recommendation was, I think. But I think the recommendation clearly is to accept the top three and enter into negotiations with the top-ranked firm.
Okay.
If that's not accepted,
I'm
then
gonna
you go to
put
the
it in a
second-ranked
motion that
firm.
I'll make a recommendation that we go in there and the top ranked firms is number 1, Purvis Gray and Company, number 2, Robertson Associates, and number 3, Carr, Riggs and Ingram. Start with number 1. If that doesn't work, go to number 2, go to number 3 if that don't work. But follow the process on out. This is the reason, Mr. Chairman, I think that's Madam Clerk.
See, I think that if I'm looking at the law right, I don't think the board can direct staff to negotiate. You're the governing body. You have to negotiate. Staff can't go do it for you.
Okay.
I mean, the committee didn't recommend staff to negotiate. The committee recommended ranking 1, 2, 3. That's the only thing the committee did. Commissioner Jones can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think y'all can direct staff to negotiate for you. The law says the governing body.
That we need to. Okay. Well, I will send my motion on that then, and we'll just figure this out. Then, what do you recommend, Madam Clerk?
I mean, in 2012, staff didn't negotiate. The
It
board
came to the
itself
board.
did their own
We interviewed,
negotiating.
and came to the board or whatever, yeah. Okay,
Mike, you
I
got,
make a motion, we to let it stay like it is.
hang on, county attorney here, want to say something?
Yes, Commissioner. And that's one reason I was wanting to maybe kick this can down the road as opposed to doing it live. But the statute, I think it's at your discretion whether you do this or not. The statute does say that in negotiations with firms, the governing body may allow a designee to conduct negotiations on its behalf. So, I mean, if the board wants staff to do it, I think you can, or if you want to do it yourself, I think you can do that as well. You're not required to designate anybody. I just don't have a active recollection whether they said staff, what the committee's recommendation was. And so that's why I wanted to review that record and see what their recommendation was. But
well, this is,
regardless of their recommendation, y'all can make the decision to appoint a designee or to do the interviews yourself.
I make a motion that we schedule interviews for, well, we got 3 or 4 motions.
I got motions going everywhere. Commissioner Lockwood made a motion before I interrupted him. What was your motion?
Just to let it
Commissioner
stay
Lockwood?
like it is.
Yeah, okay.
We keep all the funds we got.
That would be rejecting the
That's
RFQ.
right.
We got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Lockley to keep things as
The
they
law
are.
said that we got to, how we got to do it.
The law doesn't require you to bid this
Or the
out,
whatever.
Commissioner Massey. The board elected to go through this process. The RFQ, by its very terms, and I can pull the language out specifically if need be, but there was language in the published RFQ that the board reserved the right to reject all submittals if the board decided that was in the best interest of Franklin County.
That's the only thing, that's the only thing that we did.
So you can accept the committee's recommendation and move forward with the negotiations, or if y'all wanted to reject You also have the authority to reject the committee's recommendation and also reject all of the submittals and keep things as they are, is the way Commissioner Lockley said it, is board discretion.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I mean, we just discussed it, and Mr. Noah still got his motion out there, hadn't got a second on it, but I'm gonna just tell you, I think, I'd like to see the interview come before this board and interview the three candidates that the review committee has suggested. But it's up to the board, I'm just one member, so, but,
We do have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Lockley. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Massey. Discussion. You know, I'm at the point where I would rather see us go and take the recommendation of staff and let county staff do the negotiation. And to short circuit what the committee's done, and the board voted to go out for RFQs, RFPs, whatever it was we went out for, and to short circuit that after you've been through the process of having these committee meetings and ranking these firms, and you know, I just think we need to follow the process with that. I'm not really interested in interviewing the rank, neither of the three companies. I think county staff would be acceptable for me to do that, but we do have a motion and a second on the floor to short circuit and stay with who we've been using as the auditing firm for the county. All those in favor? All opposed?
I oppose.
I oppose. Now,
how would you like to have it, Mr. Chair?
just the way it's recommended, to accept the committee's recommendation as the ranked firms and have county staff begin negotiations with number one.
And you're comfortable with county
Yeah,
staff doing it?
I am.
Before you make the motion, I want to say, no indifference to Madam Clerk, but I just put staff because that's what we do in most circumstances, almost all circumstances, you know. And so that's when they make the top three, I'm sorry, you know, just like at the hospital, you know, the hospital board is not the ones that are going to interview or negotiation, whatever term the attorney is comfortable with the number one rank. So I just followed suit for both. And I thought that was the will of the audit review committee.
Okay.
Because in the past, there wasn't correct me, ma'am, it wasn't a public meeting the last time, it was more of a roundtable meeting of the audit review committee, was it not?
Everything was different in
Yeah.
2012 with this, but I was just trying to clarify that the committee didn't recommend staff
Yeah.
negotiating. The committee ranked them, that was the only
Just
thing
ranked
the
them.
committee did.
Yes, and I inferred that it meant the
Yeah, it
staff to
says-
do negotiations.
Yeah, it says to accept the committee's recommendation
Yes.
and direct county staff to begin negotiations. So it doesn't really say the committee recommended that,
No.
but that was your
Yes,
recommendation.
that was my inference.
Well, then I'll go ahead and make a motion that we follow through with this and keep up with the process and do the board action to accept the committee's recommendation and direct the county staff to move forward with negotiations.
I second it, and I do want to enter discussion, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure this board is aware. The way it was approached, we ranked them, we scored them. That's really the only thing that was talked about that day when we met,
Okay.
was
And that's
what had
what
already
you're
been
supposed
done. You know what I mean? So, just so
they
you
wasn't
guys know.
interviewed? So
No,
the
no,
applicants
no.
wasn't interviewed?
No,
No,
ma'am.
no, there was no
Okay.
discussion.
Not by the audit review committee or not?
So I just want to make sure this board is aware of that, so you know.
They wasn't interviewed?
No, ma'am.
Nope.
Okay.
It was based on the two questions that, and I'm sorry, Commissioner Jones was on the review, I won't.
Yeah,
You can
that's good.
explain further what it was.
No, it's just, there was some ambiguity about what we could or couldn't do up until the time it happened. When it come time to actually have the audit review committee meeting, I think some of the members were confused. Some of the members couldn't be here and had a designee in their place, so it was just kind of off, and that's just the nature of things sometimes.
We do have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I oppose.
Let the record reflect 3-2 to follow staff's recommendations to begin negotiations with number one ranked firm.
And by staff, I do include the finance office because they're the ones that are influenced the most by, affected the most by this decision, so.
Had their representative there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
both of their representatives.
They were part of the ranking.
Let me, well, I was gonna say, when you're going out for these different proposals, whether it's the attorney, whether it's the auditing firm, if you're not in favor of going out for that stuff, then don't vote for it. That cuts out all of this committee meetings and audit committee and all. If you're not in favor of something, speak up and say you're not in favor of it. And it cuts all this out. Once the process has begun, you need to let the process play out. But if you're not in favor of it, say you're not in favor of it, and the process never begins. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, we can have Mr. Morone clarify who the county staff is, so we know who's actually going to be looking at
Who's
these
gonna
and
be on the
negotiating.
I was
Review committee.
I was thinking the finance director, the assistant finance director, and myself, basically, is what
Yeah.
I was looking at. I didn't see the need
That's
for
good.
anyone else
Okay.
to be part of that.
That sounds good to me. Sounds good to me.
Unless the board recommends somebody else I add to it.
I think you got it covered.
Yeah, Mike.
Okay, good enough?
Yeah, just want something on the record.
Yes, sir. All right, item number 4. The board, at your July 17, 2018 meeting, authorized the sheriff to upgrade the control panel in the dispatch control rooms for the jail, as the current system was outdated and creating a safety and security issue. As the vendor was reviewing the layout, it was discovered that one of the correction officers in a certain control area experiences a safety or security event and pressed the duress button on the control panel, then had to leave that area, there would be no way of accessing that control panel or the area without going back to that specific area. Okay, that's a little confusing. Let me clear this up. Basically, and I'm trying to be general because I don't want to tell the public exactly where we're talking about in the jail. However, if there's an issue in a certain area, in this one control panel, if that duress button is hit and they leave to get away from the situation, they cannot control that area at all until they get back into that access to that control panel, which is in that area. So I hope I'm clear.
I saw that day that I went out there.
Yes.
The sheriff showed me and.
And I hope I cleared that up for everyone.
Yeah, you were very clear on this. This is the good thing right here.
The best option is to add hardware and software that would transfer control of that panel to another control panel if the duress button is pressed, like remote access. The cost of this upgrade would be $899. I hope I attach a change order, increasing the total project cost to $40,641. The sheriff strongly recommends this upgrade. Board action to authorize the change order.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Lockett, second by Commissioner Sanders. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, item number 5 has some asterisks because I didn't receive this information until yesterday, but I updated my report immediately. Yesterday, I was informed by the Sheriff's Department that the federal and state governments have finally worked through their issues and are ready to release FDLE's JAG grant funding. The sheriff uses this funding for his narcotics department. Board action to authorize the chairman's signature on the certificate of participation, accepting these funds on behalf of the sheriff. They've had this grant for years, but last year the state and federal government got into a fight, so they never released this money, and they're ready to let them have it now, but now it's hurry up and do everything.
So moved.
Second.
That'd
We
be
have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Lockett, second by Commissioner Sanders. Do I need to ask for public comment on this?
Yes, sir.
Public comment on this non-agenda item relating to the Sheriff's Department and federal grant? Is there any public comment? There being no further public comment, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Will they get double since they, I mean, from last year and this year?
No, so I don't know. I don't know if it's, I see what you're saying. If it covers more than one fiscal year, I'll double check with Ginger this afternoon and let her know. Actually, I'll ask Ginger when she comes to the budget, public hearing this afternoon, sir. She can answer you. Item 6, board action to authorize the chairman's signature on Florida's Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission fiscal year 17-18 grant agreement for the removal of a derelict vessel in the East Point Channel. Originally, staff applied to have 2 vessels removed. However, FWC was not able to complete the legal work on one of those vessels, so we proceeded with the application for the removal of the eligible vessel.
Pleasure of the board.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the chairman to sign this.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Massey. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
For your information, staff has received a signed agreement from Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission's Florida Boating Improvement Program for the design improvements to Old Ferry Dock Boat Ramp. Dewberry will design the project because the dollar amount of the agreement, which is $40,798, doesn't meet the minimum amount that requires advertising under the Consultants Competitive Negotiations Act. Yeah, so that's that.
Can I add something to that, Mike?
Of course, sir.
Sorry, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. When I was talking to Mike about this, and I already knew about it, they've been talking to me about it now for, well, I actually met the young lady when we were designating the park over in outside Carabel,
Yeah.
Commissioner Sanders, and had an opportunity to speak with her about Old Ferry Dock Boat Ramp, because there was some confusion last year. We thought they were working on Old Ferry Dock.
Talking
It
about
was in-
Jessica or?
Yes, and they wanted, it was Indian Creek, and knowing, and Michael said that this didn't really have to be bid, knowing that it's taken forever, a la the Lombardi project and the other stuff.
Hey, that's not.
We're just trying to move the timeline along. We're not trying to do anything wrong. I just want to make sure you understand that.
Yeah.
Item 8 is also for board information. Staff has also received a fully executed agreement from the Florida Department of Transportation for the design of County Road 67, widening and resurfacing small county outreach program known as SCOP project. The estimated cost of this project is $383,322 and shall be completed by June 30th, 2019. The county will apply for construction funding in 2021, and that's based on FDOT's schedule, not ours. The request for qualifications advertisement has been sent to the local paper in order to expedite the commencement of this project. So, hey, Paper Ray, that's another project we've been waiting for quite some time. Moving right along. Item 9, the Finance Office has requested a special end of the fiscal year meeting to approve the final bill list for fiscal year 2017-2018, which reduces the amount of bookkeeping transactions. I would like to schedule this special meeting on Monday, September 24th at 4 p.m. right here, due to the Florida Association of Counties Innovation and Policy Conference during that week and the county court schedule for that day. So you guys, the ones that have to attend that conference will leave on Tuesday morning, and so we can do it Monday afternoon at 4 o'clock if that's good with everybody. It'll take hopefully no more than 15 minutes.
How many of the commissioners are going down to Charlotte County? Just me and
And
you?
Know where you're going,
You
aren't
know where
Yeah.
you're going?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, okay,
You all have mandatory meetings you have to attend.
yeah.
Motion to approve.
Need the pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve.
I
Second.
have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Sanders. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
Item 10, I've received an invoice from Florida Shore and Beach Preservation Association for membership dues in the amount of $1,000. The county has been member since 2015, but has not attended any of their conferences or used any of their lobbying services. Is the board interested in continuing the county's membership in this association? I asked Mr. Pierce about this. He has a little bit more history. He said, as far as he knows, they're basically a lobbying firm if we ever do.
Beach renourishment. Their main deal, and they're the biggest proponent for beach renourishment around the state of Florida. And every county who has beach renourishment is a member, and it's a lobbying firm for beach renourishment. Until we get back to that business, and you can join any time, my suggestion is save $1,000. Let's see if we ever do beach renourishment.
Apply that to many other things, Commissioner, $1,000.
Pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve staff's recommendation.
Of not continuing.
That's right.
Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Massey. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
I just want to remind you, 5:15 this afternoon, your final budget public hearing right here.
Today?
Today, sir.
I got something for you.
Yes, sir?
I called over to the courthouse the other day to look at it. Up on top, there's some mildew in there and the windows is leaking bad and all. Up in this side of it over here,
Facing this way? Yes,
yeah,
sir.
they all leaking, it don't look good.
Okay.
I'd like to see us build a new courthouse and put it on the ballot for people to vote on it and build a new courthouse.
Okay.
But Pam's gotta have an office, Heather's gotta have an office. So I know, I mean, we gotta have some more space, and it's got combined it, put it on the ballot to build a new courthouse.
Okay, so you're making, you're telling me you're making a motion, or?
Making a motion, to put it on the ballot, to build a new courthouse, try to put it right by the jailhouse right there, can put it beside the jailhouse, and we'll have room for the he can just move over there instead of hauling all these people over this way.
So I need to check with the supervisor of elections to see, number one, if we can still put it on the upcoming ballot. I guess is what you're asking me, Commissioner?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is that? Just a question to ask on the ballot?
If we can get it put on there when we do it, or special, whatever.
Just to see if the people will approve moving the courthouse?
Yeah, move it. put
And
it
building a
on
brand new one?
67 half, yeah, brand new one.
Okay.
Comments
Comments from any of the other commissioners?
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have no problem asking the people on the ballot the question. Would you like to have a new courthouse over on 65? But then there's a lot of questions into it. But the first question you need to find out is if you can still put a question on the ballot.
Okay.
So it's gonna be a non-binding question, essentially, like we did a non-binding.
I don't know if I would put a non-binding.
Well, I mean, I'm afraid, I'm not.
Sort of like a straw ballot.
Yeah, because you don't have enough information to really be definitive
Yeah.
on what it's gonna cost, all that kind of stuff.
Yep, check in, see what it's gonna cost.
Well,
what
you wouldn't be able to do something until anyway 2020 census anyway. Because, I mean, you go by the census up there, and predominantly the courthouse is around the centralized population, so.
So at this moment, I am finding out from the supervisor of election if this is even possible.
And I'll second his motion for information, to be able to get information.
Okay, just for
I don't have
information
no-
purposes.
I think the courthouse has to be in the.
County seat?
County seat, that's what I'm trying to
No,
get,
you can
Chairman.
check on it, don't have to be, it can be central of the county. If you need to pull it up and check it,
That's
it can be central of the
Something else,
county.
that's a question that needs to be answered, but
Yeah,
Well, the first answer is, can we put anything on the ballot, a question on the ballot too?
I think you can put I know you can put a courthouse annex anywhere in the county, but as far as where the actual courthouse is, I'm pretty sure it has to be in the county seat, but honestly, I've never looked at that. I've never had to look at that, so
Well, let's
I'll look
check it
into
out
it and
and
let you
see.
know.
Check
Fine,
it
I'll
out
let
and
you know,
see.
Commissioner.
I think it should stay here. Myself.
I mean, I'm just telling you,
County seat.
I know you want to stay here, but people on that side of the river like to see it central, like the school and like the jail. Central of the county.
And like I said, I seconded Commissioner Massey's motion, because I'd like to have the information about if you can put something on the ballot.
Exactly what is the motion?
Well, he
I mean,
just said it.
Motion to
There's
see
a
if we
question.
can, if we put on the ballot, they can
Ask
be
the
done,
question.
and ask the
Ask the
question if it can
question.
be done to move it central to county over by the jailhouse.
So the motion is from county staff to get with supervisor and ask the question, can it be put on the ballot?
Yeah, and
Is there enough time to
the
put it on
lawyer
the
see
ballot
if it
for
can be
November?
done.
Okay, we do have a motion second on the floor. All those in favor?
Public
How-
comment.
Public comment. There being no public comment, all those in favor?
Ah,
All those opposed?
I vote.
I oppose. Let the record reflect 3-2.
Yes, sir.
All right, now where we at?
I'm finished if you guys are finished with me.
Okay, next on the agenda would be Mr. Schuler.
Yes, sir. We've tackled, I think, the main issue on my report. That leaves us with the ESF 15 contract that's been proposed with Capital Area Community Action Agency. I believe we're supposed to have two people, Ms. Nina and Ms. Ann Richardson. Are y'all here? Would y'all come up front so the board can see y'all? Commissioners, I have, as Commissioner Sanders has, I believe, wisely pointed out, and I should have conferred with Pam. She's made a couple of good comments,
Thank you, Mr.
clarifications that she wants on the contract. Based on my conversations with Mr. Sanders, that's not going to be an issue. One of the items that she wants to have clarified is that Capital Area will be managing both donations and volunteers for the county. I know that's the case from my conversations with Mr. Sanders, so I don't anticipate that being an issue. And She also wanted to make sure that the annual fee would not be coming out of her budget unless there's additional funds given to her. Of course, where the board takes funds out of is at your discretion, but my recommendation would be that you consider, if you approve this contract, to take that $3,500 out of the professional services budget, at least for the first year, and then maybe next year you could adjust Ms. Pam's budget, or maybe that's some adjustment y'all can make today at your final budget hearing. That's up to the board. But what I've given you is essentially a 3-page contract for community area to provide the ESF 15 functions to the EOC on behalf of Franklin County. Does the board have any questions for me about the specifics of the contract before I proceed?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I voice, I'm concerned about this. Because when the ES-15, the fire victims, all that, myself and especially Mr. Noah Lockley was very explicit that we wanted 100% of the funds to go to the fire victims in East Point. We said we did, isn't that right, Mr. Noah? And we said we did not want any administrative money paid on there. Now, the ES-15, the prior ESF-15 that we had was made up of volunteers and they didn't charge nothing. Now, we shall provide them $3,500 annually to be able to do this. This ESF-15 is a volunteer organization. We shouldn't be paying money for it. I don't care if it's $3,500 or $1. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Franklin's Promise. I don't care if it's CERT. I don't care if it's capital area. It should not, we should not have to have no monetary money put in there for them to be able to do that. I mean, that's just my opinion. And I will be against this. I can tell you ahead of time, I'm gonna be opposing this. I don't think it's right. And I would rather it be our local folks who have been here. Do I have a problem even? I ain't got no problem with nobody. But the thing about it is we need to be local, and we don't need 1 penny of county money or this fire money going into supplementing somebody's budget to come down here and take care of something that we already have volunteers to take care of to start with. So, anyway, that's just my point of view.
Is there any other questions for me or comments from the board?
Go ahead, Mr. Noah.
Where the money coming out of to pay them?
The contract specifically provides, as the board has clearly directed, 100% of the donation money goes to the people in East Point. None of the donation money would be used. What Mr. Center is proposing is he's going to hire a full-time local employee. I'm told the salary is going to be about $30,000 a year. He's asking for a $3,500 contribution from the county annually. This new local employee would be an employee of Capital Area and subject to their oversight and management, but their functions would also include the SF-15 functions, managing donations and volunteers for the EOC. That's essentially the difference between this contract that you're looking at now and the one that you had originally, because, you know, we're, 3 months down the road now. There's been a lot of time to have further discussions and sort of expand the scope of what this contract is going to provide, not just for the wildfire donations, but for all of the ESF-15 functions. And I believe that the contract in the form that it is now is within the parameters of what I at least understood to be the directions for the board. So I was coming to you today to make this presentation, give you a chance to meet with Ms. Knight and Ms. Ann Richardson, if y'all have any questions for them in terms of what Capital Area services they would be providing. Mr. Centers would like to have been here, but he tells me he's traveling out of state at this time and could not be present. But to answer your question specifically, where would it come from? Not the donations. It would come out of probably your professional services budget would be the most likely source of funding, at least in year one.
Any other questions from the board?
I just want to ask a clarifying question if I can, Mr. Chairman. So, Attorney Schuler, this position they're talking about, Ms. Pat Carroll used to actually fill a position in the county for them, correct?
That's my understanding as of maybe a year ago, it was
Yeah.
vacant.
And they still don't have that position filled in the county. So they would be assuming that position and the ESF 15 for the county. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
That's what I read into the email
Okay.
from Mr. Centers, yes, sir.
Okay.
Y'all already in the county, right?
Yes.
They do, what y'all do?
We do the Head Start program, and we also do the LAHEAP, the Utility Emergency Assistance Program. So yes, we're already here. Been here for several years.
I thought so.
Pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones. Do we have a second? We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jones. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Commissioner Lockley. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I oppose.
Let the record reflect 3-2 with Commissioner Sanders and Commissioner Massey opposing.
All right, Commissioner Chairman, may I proceed?
Yes.
Item number 2 on my report, after further inquiry and clarification on my.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry.
Y'all
Thank you,
say-
ma'am.
Oh, I'm
Thank
very
you.
sorry. Thank you so much for coming down.
Sorry about that.
Let them know it's
Thank you,
bad.
thank you.
I don't know what to do.
After clarification on my part, I'm going to take item number 2 off my report simply because, having made further inquiry, I'm convinced in my own mind the board's already approved that. There's no sense in asking y'all to do something twice. Item number 3 has already been dealt with. Item number 4 has been completed. Does the board have any questions for me?
Any questions from the board to the attorney?
I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
It's not a question, it's just an observation. It's concerning some information that you sent to us through this too, on the 3 individuals that want their money back
Oh, yes, ma'am.
from the thing. And you said it would be up to the county commission to, you had deferred and spoke to the county auditors, and that it would be basically up to the commission, what the commission decided to do as far as getting those funds back to those folks or whatever. Given the circumstances and the people that's requesting it, I would myself, I'm outvoted a lot. I would say give those people back their money 100% if they're asking for the money back.
Commissioner, if the board wants to make the voluntary return of those funds, you certainly can, but I would advise the board that you need to make that on a pro rata basis that
Why?
Because that was the advice from the CPA in terms of how to properly account for and make the refund, because otherwise you've already spent a lot of different people's money in small portions, and so what you end up doing is if you give somebody 100% refund, well, then you're actually sort of taking money away from other people's, the way I've read and understood the CPA's advice.
Well, the only reason why I would say this is we all know who the foundations are and the trust is and everything. These people have been part of our community for many, 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 many years, and it would disappoint me if we if we did anything less than that. Now, the thing about it is they're saying that I know 2 entities said, I don't know about that third one, because I mean, just by communication with you.
Yes, ma'am.
That they gave the money to Franklin's Promise and not a government entity. Am I correct?
That is what they said, yes, ma'am.
Okay. My thing is, if y'all want to prorate it, that's fine. But if they want 100% of their money back, they need to have 100% of their money back. That's the way I look at it. I would hate to know that this man served all these years in this county and not, you know, and the people, they genuinely love the people of Franklin County. And the man is dead and gone now. But I had high regard for him, as well as everybody else in this room did. And when that trust and when that foundation puts money into something, they're putting it in there with their hearts. And so they feel like their money was not given to the proper thing because they do not do business with government entities. That is plain as day. When we did what we did before even, I don't think the first check was even cut then. We went against the purpose of why they put the money in there. And I think they deserve the money back. And I'm gonna make a motion, and I have to state it for record, because we have to put it in the motion. I'm stating that, I'm making a motion to give Steve Watkins back the money that he donated, Joy Watkins on behalf of the Watkins Foundation, the money that she donated, and Ben, or I call him Benji Watkins, yeah, the money that he donated through the Watkins Trust or whatever. And I make a motion to get it back to them 100%. If they want their money, they need to have it back.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Sanders, second by Commissioner Jones. Any further discussion?
Yeah, now so they ain't gonna, that mean they won't be gonna participate in nothing like the people spent.
That's correct.
Well, some of this stuff happened for that.
I think so too.
I mean, y'all vote however y'all feel.
Right.
I mean, you
We
know,
do
that's
have a
it.
motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I oppose.
Anything else from Mr. Schuler this morning?
No, that's it. I think that's enough.
The only other thing I would add, Commissioner, is.
Do what?
What was the vote, excuse me?
3-2.
I can't hear
What
you.
was the vote? The total vote?
3-2.
No, wait.
Me and Mr. Lockley opposing.
Okay. Then, the only other item I would recommend is that once we get this contract finalized and signed with Capital Area, that the board would by motion authorize the clerk to transfer whatever net monies are left after the refunds to Capital Area Action Agency. Because I think the clerk's gonna need something in the record to authorize the transfer of that money once, after the refunds are made.
Pleasure of the board.
I make a motion to do that.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Lockley. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion passes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing else for the board. And
We're down to commissioner comment.
Yeah, I got one. Looking on, what is that deal? We had a problem out there to the airport. The man said, according to this, the water, he had them high water bills. Is it I need to know, is we, by us being the owner of that particular unit he using, we own it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it our responsibility to go at the city to get this man money back? He pay it, when you rent that out, what you're saying, you rent it as he paid water bill, he take care of all that, how this thing go?
Commissioner Lockley, the way the lease is written, the utilities are the sole responsibility of the tenant, not the landlord. So they're Mr. Bones, the utilities are Dr. John Bones' responsibility, not the county's.
Okay.
I think what we're talking about is, there's legal technicalities and then there's compromise on what the board felt was the right thing to do, which is the modification that y'all made here today. But legally, technically, I mean, those utilities are the responsibility of the tenant, and that's between him and the city of Apalachicola. But you know, there's legalities, and then there's trying to work with your tenant to make sure they're happy and content where they are.
Well, we can't be taking up the slack. I mean, if they run into problem like this, boom, something like that happen again, or something like, anything can happen.
We may have to get involved because the city of Apalachicola, as I understand it, finally recognized that the leak was not on Dr. Bone's side of the meter. They billed him anyway. I mean, it's.
Well, it would have went through the meter if it had been on his side. If it's on this side, it would have never went through the meter.
I agree, so, I mean.
How do they even calculate
Huh?
a number if it
I
doesn't go through the
don't know.
meter?
They can't, because if it went through that man's meter, it would be going through his house. If it didn't go through the meter like with City of Carabel, if it don't go through the meter.
I agree,
You
but
don't
we
pay
turned the
for it.
meter off, there was no leaks.
Exactly, it's on the city side, they need to pay the man's money
They
back.
need to pay that man money.
Let me ask you something, is it a substantial amount of money?
It was thousands of dollars, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Wasn't it like $4,500 or something?
Make a motion.
I remember it come up to like $4,500.
My goodness.
Well, I make a motion that we put it on record to tell the city it wasn't on, we didn't have no part of that. And it was on their account, it was their problem.
They were just looking for some.
So you're
free
gonna
money.
make a motion to request the city to refund the man's money?
Yeah.
I'll make the second.
Yeah, because it, you know, it wasn't on our problem, they told him it was on our side. They told him that, so
Okay.
I'm telling him it wasn't on our side and get that man his money back, so he can give us our back.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Lockley. Who made the
I
second?
did.
Second by Commissioner Sanders. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carried. Any other commissioner comment?
I got something, Mr. Chairman. I want to share with all you commissioners, the other day, last Thursday, went to the ARPC meeting in Quincy. I'm gonna give y'all a couple of things from that meeting that might be of interest to you. The ARPC, Appalachian Regional Planning Council, has gotten an approval or grant approval for a GIS grant, which is gonna allow them to go forward with providing the 8. There's 9 counties total, but Leon doesn't really need what they're providing. The 8 counties left in the ARPC are gonna be able to get, the future land use mapping and some of the basic GIS mapping paid for by the grant for all the counties. There also was a meeting about a month ago with the FDOT and 9 other states' DOTs about the approaches to regional planning for transportation, much like they have in the CRTPA, the Capital Regional Transportation Planning Agency. And they were trying to find out, Florida's trying to find out how these other states are doing and making it work. So their conversation is looking very favorably that they're going to favor using the RPCs as an agency to be formed underneath them to help rural counties such as ourselves and the rest are in the ARPC to have a more regional approach to transportation planning and for us to basically be adding into somebody else's plan. Just want to make sure all of you commissioners are aware of that.
Any other commissioner comment? I got one comment I want to speak on real quick, and that is on the last vote of refunding the Watkins their money. I'm not opposed to refunding their money. I just thought we should have done it as a prorated formula as recommended by the CPA. And that's my general statement on that. I was not opposed to giving the people back their money. I was 100% about giving the money back. But on the recommendation of the CPA, I was willing to do it as a prorated formula.
Yeah, me too.
And-
I mean, 'cause some of that money was spent
Yeah, it was spent prior.
before Franklin Crumlin got out of it.
Any other commissioner comment? Meeting adjourned.
Be back here.
It's right on
Be back
time.
at